Oh, hi everybody. Oh, there's my phone. I'm gonna look lean over and get my phone. I need to verify if Connor's on his way. Oh, there's Connor. Never mind. Okay. So I see Connor. I see Jude, of course. Hi, Jude.
Hi.
Oh, and there's Connor.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi there, Connor. Okay. So for those that are we're still admitting people. Um, okay. So this is the oh wait, we have one more person joining. I'll hang on just 1 minute here. Well, I'm not sure how long we'll take them. So this is the zoning revision committee meeting. I see we have a number of guests. What we're talking about, as a lot of people know, is we're talking about STRs and where we last left off on STRs. We were actually the ZRC, which is Jude and Connor and I, were having some disagreements amongst ourselves. And Connor, what Jude and I talked about, and you and I didn't get a chance to talk about yet, I did leave you a voicemail today, but I didn't hear back from you, so you're probably very busy. I know you were. Anyway, is because we have disagreements, to not try to stamp out anybody's thoughts, is I'm going to put in parts of the document where we have disagreements, I'm going to put a table, and on one side of the table say we could go this way, and the other side of the table we could go that way. It's up to the town board anyway. And instead of trying to get, we have different options. I talked with Bill. I said, well, what do we do? Because we've got three people, and Connor and Jude, both of you have been fabulous as ZRC members and brought fabulous perspective, fabulous ideas, and we have fabulous accomplishments. And it's thanks to everything that you all have done, in addition to others who have been on the ZRC. But that being said, we seem to be on opposite sides of the fence here on the STR. And so, because it's the town board's decision anyway, instead of us trying to arm wrestle and have fights, I'm just going to document alternative approaches, and then we'll have conversations with the town board. And I understand everybody has good reasons for what they believe. But anyway, so that's where the document is. I've put back in some things because I agreed to, in the interest of compromise, I had agreed to some things at the last meeting. And then when I said, hey, I just can't compromise one step further, and then it's like, oh no, you're taking over now. Well, anyway, so I think the way I'm just going to solve all of that, I, you know, we're going to have one, we're going to have one option that is more restrictive and one option that's more lenient. And it may be that the town board as a body says it ought to be somewhere in between. They might go with restrictive, they might go with lenient, but in any event, that's where we are. So to everybody on, this is a ZRC meeting. We have the ZRC go through our deliberations. We do have public be heard at the end. We will do that. We'll hope that anybody in public be heard can speak in 3 minutes or less, because otherwise it gets a little crazy. And usually when you have a point to make, you can make it in 3 minutes. So that will be the hope for public be heard, that people can be giving their public be heard in 3 minutes or less. And then we'll just, but this is the approach that I'm taking at this point in time. And I think we want to keep, the ZRC, Jude has valuable reasons for why she has her beliefs. Connor has valuable reasons for why he has his beliefs. And I think I got valuable reasons for my beliefs. So we're just going to just document alternatives. And this is an evolution anyway. So that being said, we're talking about STRs today. I don't,
I think I don't want to move too much further ahead from that because it's not really just a simple evolution. This is depending on the clarification that I know that I need on what we're talking about here, that this is a fundamental overhaul of how this board operates. And I certainly have questions before, we discuss going forward because reading the email, which I did, and I again apologize that I couldn't return your call, but I do work during the day.
yeah.
And, you know, in that respect, it would have been nice to have, had a discussion about this, like I think, we all are very public facing here in how we do everything. And so it's not it doesn't feel particularly congenial to be surprised by something like this, and to be and just start from the top. The way you've described it in the email feels a little even different from how you're describing it now, because what it sounds like, and I need to hear it, plainly from you, is that we are going to essentially be in tandem creating two different laws, and that one of those laws, because you feel that, there are the differences of opinion are too great, and not, again, the opinion is, I think, not even the way I would put it, because I don't have just beliefs. I don't have intractable beliefs about these things. I've been watching presentations. I've been seeing multiple expert people come into here, not just, one party or the other, and, discuss these on mechanical and statistical levels that are not very, to me, controversial, or uh, I guess I would say, particular, like the kind of thing you would just have an opinion. They're numbers. So I definitely have a fundamental problem with us not bringing a body of work as a unit. And again, I'm sorry to be forward about this, but this is the reason that Ed left, not because he didn't have time. It's because we weren't he didn't feel his time was being respected in the way that things were going. And now this additional step to me feels like, and I am not, I want to, I feel it not be a belief, but I feel uh, a duty to seeing this law through, and doing so, with the vantage that I have, that you have, that Jude has, having not just heard from any one particular group, but many, some expert, some with personal, interests in this issue, and some, again, with a much higher, more macro view of the issue. So is what you're saying is, let me put it to you this way. So if you're saying that we should work on two bills simultaneously, and that we're just going to put them through in this disparate fashion, then we're not really operating as a board anymore. And the idea that we're going to come in here and try to earn your endorsement and negotiate with you now, as you are feeling entrenched in your opinion in a way that I do not feel you have been willing to do for us in this most recent case. I'm not saying we have never compromised. I'm not trying to make any far-flung, accusation against you or anything like that. What I'm saying is that recently I have heard, well, this is a good idea no matter who it comes from, but I'm not hearing real substantial defenses of the argument. We have had all from the moment Ed and Jude came back with that first draft, it's informed by everyone and everything who presented. So my question is, how are we going to, why, if you're just going to make a second track for a law that you want to see as you want to see it, then what are we doing as a board?
Okay.
Like,
Well, okay, let me try to answer some things. So first of all, as part of what you said I didn't compromise. I did compromise. I compromised when, the current law for the owner occupied, the current law doesn't have any restriction of how many days you can do owner occupied in either home or establishment. And I had added the words in. I had compromised because I don't know, you or Jude, or somehow the conversation was going very clearly that there was a strong push to say, hey, we really need to limit the number of non-owner occupied. We need to bring it down so that even 30 days was too many. We had a type 3 and a type 4. Type 3 was 30 days or fewer, and type 4 was going to be more days. Well, we ought to have 30 days or fewer, and even fewer than that. I had even crossed out the type 4, which was over 30 days. That was a compromise on my part.
I-
So I was compromising.
Can I just say one thing
No,
really quick? Because
hang on, hang on.
it's not that you're not compromising. I'm not saying you're not compromising. What I'm saying is that the arguments that you have most recently made, I don't feel I do not feel you have put in. I have not heard the basically the argument from you. All I've heard is that you have received some anonymous complaints about things regarding multiple aspects of this board, and I'm asking you to like, why is it easier for you to make a new track for this law rather than to convince us of your argument? Because I have heard the proposal, but I have not heard the argument for it.
Well, okay, so I don't have numbers, but I have a belief. I have a belief that as we take the STR law where it is, if you think of a pendulum, and so there are some people that believe that the pendulum is too far lenient. And I believe that where we were headed as of last week was too far restrictive. I believe the pendulum is headed too far restrictive. And in talking to Bill and Anula, which is a quorum of the board, they were also believing we were getting too far restrictive. So I believe that somewhere in the middle, but it's okay to say, hey, if we were really restrictive, what would it look like? It's okay to build that picture. But I felt like we fought more than we've ever fought on the ZRC at our last meeting. And I thought a solution to that was to say, hey, let's just go ahead and put the two ways of looking at it in here, because it is a board decision anyway. And you're right. Then we're not, as of ZRC, coming forth with a ZRC endorsed proposal. But I believed after the last meeting, we were not going to get a ZRC endorsed proposal, because after I compromise and compromise and compromise and compromise on huge things, and then you said, okay, let's say if you're doing 100, 120 days, or whatever the days was, you got to say which 3 months that's going to be in. And I said, no, I can't compromise that much. And then you got kind of, you were not happy with me and saying, so one person's going to override it. Well, it wasn't really compromise in terms of my opinions when I went ahead and crossed out a lot of stuff that I thought was good, and I crossed it out in the interest of compromise. And then when I said I just can't go that one step forward because I just think that's too far, and then I felt accused of trying to override the majority. So
Then let me just say then really quickly, like what I was frustrated about was not that all of a sudden I wasn't getting my way on how the law would be. I wanted it to be something that we revisit. A note that particularly what I wanted in that moment was a note on the margin. Maybe I remember certain things differently, and I certainly didn't want to offend you. It was and so I apologize if I did. That being said, I just I this issue obviously means a lot to everyone who is tangential to it, and there is, as Jude has reminded us many times, a very large silent majority on this issue that we have not been able to tap into yet. And my concern here is that while I am passionate about it, if we are intractably going to end up with two different results, then I just don't feel it's very respectful of our time to come in here and try to negotiate a position from that we are not interested in unifying and presenting as a body. Because maybe I don't under I thought I understood how this board worked. I thought via all of our successes and via the process by which we got there that we can, and I should say not thought, I think that we can get there. But I suppose, if again, if we're I do not think that splintering this is going to be healthy for the outcome or for this board. It seems very damaging to me.
well, I'll go ahead, Jude.
No, I was just going to say, I know that we ended on a note that was a little bit difficult, but I felt up until that point, and I know that Laura, um, you were open to changes and you were open to discussion and all of those things. And you, in fact, said you could go along with removing the fourth category. And I thought about it for a long time afterwards because I wasn't sure that you, in fact, would. And I just, I'm with Connor that I think that, we have to hammer this out somehow. I don't think it's healthy for us um, to just say, okay, there's going to be two versions. If somebody from the outside wants to come in with their own version, that's one thing. But I guess I'm not really understanding beyond that one thing what we're really talking about. We haven't gotten through most of it, and I feel like we've been very clear in the beginning about we want to support people who are residents, full-time residents on the premises. We want to support their ability to be able to continue to do this. And that our main concern was with those individuals, businesses, whatever, the commodity of Woodstock that we were most concerned with. So
Right.
I'm not sure where we've diverged so greatly that you feel like you need to present a different law at this point, because up until that point, um, we had talked about different things, but I don't know that we, had set anything in stone. And I know that that one issue was going to be a sticking point because I knew a lot of people were going to come to you because they have a personal interest. They have a financial interest. And of course, they're going to not like this whole notion of somehow limiting that. When we very first started talking about this, and I think I sent the email again when Jeff made a proposal about all of this, and we were going to work off of that, and that had some pretty severe limitations. And I'm just not sure where everything went so off on this that you feel like you need to make another law. I mean, I think maybe our meetings sometimes are a little long and we all get a little tired, but it was only at the very end that I felt like there was a difficulty. And, I'm sorry if you don't feel like you were being heard, but I did feel like you did have things to say. And up until that point, I thought we were kind of in agreement. And I guess I'm going back to the very first discussion we had about this when we said we were going to take this on, the ZRC was going to take it on. And I said to you, is there a will to do this? Because it's not going to be easy. If there was an interest in revising the short-term rental law and it was only going to be very superficial, then probably, that this should have never come to us. It seemed like between the housing committee and Kai and all the presentations we've had, that there was a serious need to do something more than just, cosmetic changes. So I guess I'm a little confused because at the time everybody said, well, let's do it. Let's do it, and now I feel like we're, being bullied into, backing off on it. And so I guess I'm just not really sure where you see this going, that's so different than what we had done up until the end of the meeting. And again, I went back and I listened to it and you said you were okay with it. And as I told you, the next few days, I thought about it a lot because I was surprised and I didn't expect that. And I kind of expected this. But it's not to say that we can't still hammer something out that we can all come to some kind of agreement on. And, one of the other things I'm just going to mention is, we've heard from, the people who have an interest in this, a financial interest. But what we haven't done is we haven't talked to the people in town who have actual businesses that are in the commercial district that are, hotels or B&Bs or whatever that actually are running it as a business and how it's impacting their business. Because I do know that one of them came and spoke at one of the ZBA meetings about their lack of business. And it's certainly not because of the quality of what they're offering. So, I just don't want us to be listening to, and I've said this over and over again, I don't want us to be listening to a very tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the community about something that affects all of us. and, you know, the revolving door of strangers in your neighborhood, the community rather than commodity, you know, all those things that we've talked about. And I think that we can come to some kind of compromise about it, but I'm just not sure what happened, you know?
Well, what happened is I did honestly, yeah, and here we're airing all this on the meeting. I'm sure it'll be a good fodder for social media, but anyway, it is what it is. So I felt steamrollered. You said you feel like you're being bullied now. I felt
Not by you, Laura.
yeah,
No.
but I felt steamroller to the last meeting because I like you said, I crossed out type 4. Not that I really, but it's like, oh, well, let's think of this a new way. Okay, let's cross it out. I crossed it out. I didn't delete it. I left it in a crossed out fashion. So I hadn't totally thrown it out the window, but I did cross it out to say, okay, let's see how this looks if we do that. And again, I crossed out different things because the current if the two resident occupied STRs in the current law, one of them allows you, one's 1 to 2 bedrooms, one's 3 to 5 bedrooms. So the current law allows, if the resident's there, up to 5 bedrooms. And we had said, well, let's only have 3. And I had agreed to that. So I had agreed to different restrictions that are more restricted than the current law. And it was really that point when Connor did say, well, and let's also make, if somebody can only do 30 days in a whatever period or whatever, let's make them say which months they're talking about. And when I said, after striking out all this stuff that was really making things more restrictive than I was really comfortable with, and then when I said, that's just not a compromise I'm willing to make, then I got accused of not compromising at all after I'd done huge compromises. So I felt steamrolled. I did feel steamroller definitely at the last meeting, that when I said, hey, I've compromised enough, I can't go one step further. I was told, oh, now I'm one person running the whole show, which is a bunch of BS, pardon my French, but it was BS. So so I kind of said, well, maybe we need, and we're not done yet with the document. If we have a document where we have the lenient version and we have the restricted version, we might still, the three of us, after sleeping on it and coming back 2 weeks later, we meet every 2 weeks, we may say, let's think about it. Again, the pendulum's over here. Do we want to swing the pendulum over here? My belief, my gut feel is the pendulum ought to be somewhere in the middle, not swinging too, restrictive. So, but we're not there yet. And so for now, I'd like to put the two, after I've compromised all those things, but everybody forgets it was a compromise because now we just go forward. And, now if I don't compromise on one thing, I'm not compromising anywhere when I compromised 5 times already. So I put those compromises back in the document because if it was really the way I think it ought to be, that's how I think it ought to be. And maybe later we'll take them out, but there's the restrictive version and we can write that on a piece of paper. We can write the lenient version on a piece of paper side by side. And before we're done, maybe the three of us will say, here's what's really right. But it was getting too restrictive for me. It was total. And then when I said I just can't go one step further, I was accused of being, I'm just running the whole show now. So, which I was not, because I compromised already on huge things. So it is what it is. So
I hear you that you feel like you were steamrolled in the last meeting and that I was particularly being obtuse about it. And again, I will clarify that I wanted a note added. I didn't want a feature. It seemed you were unwilling to add this as something to return to, a thought worth returning to. I, in that moment, did not feel that, again, the only arbiter of what comes back for discussion should be, I think anything is worth discussing. There's no bad ideas in a brainstorm. I would like to move past this, so I will apologize one more time by saying I didn't mean to offend you. Maybe I let my emotions get in the way in that moment, but that does not change that I cannot, in good, like the time that we put into this is it's very important to me that I feel like it's being used well and respected. And the idea of maybe we come together in the end is not tenable for me. If we are going to divide off and create two disparate laws, I want to know that now. If we could, and that's gonna, and that would change how I think about what we do at this meeting. Because if you take this position and you say that we need a counterbalance. To me, we have softened our approach beyond what other towns have done to be accommodating of the fact that we are a tourist driven area, so that we can both protect the, I guess for lack of a better word, the continuity and the dignity of residential areas while still expanding the access that residents have to a program like this. So I don't feel that it's a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other. It's the law as it was made created extreme conditions. It's like what we talked about in post 9/11 America. Like, if the conversation is already this far to the right, then dragging it just right of center feels like a compromise. And I know that we have all made compromises on this, and everything we're doing is done in pencil and in digital ink right now. Everything can be examined, but I guess what my point here is if we are going to work on two different documents, we should start working on two different documents. And if we can commit to saying we are going to present one document as a board, and we will do the hard work of negotiating it as a team, as we've done before, even though it's harder than it has been, then we can proceed as we have. But what I can't feel good about doing is negotiating a position with you while you're telling me that you're going to effectively undermine it on with another with a more lenient approach. It just feels like then we have then that that puts us in a diametrically oppositional position.
Well, alternatively, so part of going through the whole document is, and part of by having a table that says in the places where we disagree, we have a table that says, well, this is the more restrictive, this is the more lenient. By doing that, we may eventually reach a point where we do all agree, because if we've laid out where we agree and where we disagree, we may come to a point where we do all agree, because actually type 1 and type 2, I had very little changes in terms of how to put back stuff. So type 1 and type 2, we're kind of good with. Type 3, and honestly, I put type 4 back, the idea being the board could restrict it in terms of how many you can have. I did put type 4 back because, so in any event, we can lay out where we agree and lay out where we disagree. The other option is if we as a board, I don't want to waste anybody's time. And so Jude and Connor, if you both feel that me documenting the alternative viewpoints as part of our process is a waste of your time because you already know how you think it ought to be, and if documenting the alternative viewpoints, I mean, there's a lot of good work done in the document that we're working on, and there are good things in there, and a quorum of the board will either agree with it or they won't. So so I have something I could take today to the board and say, here's a viewpoint that protects, that makes residential areas residences. And Jude's raised a very good point. We don't want hotels in residential areas. That's a perspective, and that's a good thing for us to be thinking about. And kind of, you've raised a good point that we want to have, if we don't have as many STRs, we have a hope of having more long-term rentals. We want more long-term rentals. So those are valid viewpoints. And then it's a question of, so where should the pendulum sit when we're done dealing with those viewpoints?
The question though is, are you willing to commit to a unifying document? Because the issue for me is not whether or not we make notes about different viewpoints. That's what I was frustrated wasn't happening in the last meeting. So I completely understand what you're saying. Even though I may not agree with it, the question will ultimately be, when we revisit it, I know that I have, softened my stance. I am not just some intransigent extreme position on this. It is informed by by what was largely consensus between many of our expert presenters. So the question is not whether we can document it. We should document it, especially in times where we disagree. But the question is, will we accept the consensus of the board? And
Well, if
if we submit two documents, that's an issue. That's an
well,
issue for me, because then it gives equal weight to something that does not it is not equally represented. And again, this is and I know he's not on the board anymore, but I am thinking of Ed in this too. And I don't think it should. I don't think that should escape this conversation. He was a valuable member of this board. We have a good
yes,
piece of work from him,
totally,
and
totally.
his feelings on this largely informed his decision to leave. And I don't want to just say we shouldn't do anything to it. I'm just saying that if we're going to, I just do not believe that anything less than a unified approach is going to, in terms of not of documenting, but in terms of submission. I don't want to be a part of something that's going to send two different documents as if we're doing this thing a la carte. We have had, it's hard, but we've had success hammering this out as a board. And I think that's what we need to do again.
Well, so here's the issue. The issue is right now we have a 3-member board, and it's Jude, Connor, Laura, the 3 of us. So we have and both of you lean towards restrictive. So if point by point we take a ZRC vote, it'll always be the restrictive answer, and I will then feel steamrolled, and I'll feel like we're not compromising between the 3 of us. There are 3 of us, and I don't feel like the 3 of us were compromising. I felt like it was a steamroller. It's like, well, 2 people think this, okay, I go along with it. 2 people think this, okay, I go along with it. 2 people think this, I go along with it. 2 people think this, I'm not going along with that. Oh, you're stopping the whole works. You're one person. How can one person stop in the works? So I'm okay with the theory of we have a unified statement, but the reality is, how do we get there? Are the 3 of us really compromising, or is there always a majority rules and 2 people are restrictive and one's lenient, and so the restrictive always goes, and then I got a whole law that I'm not even going to vote yes on as a board member? That doesn't make any sense. So we have a couple of options. One option is this, we can bring it to the board right now and say, this is what has been thought of, these are the ideas, and it can be the board. We can't work on it. We work on it twos and twos because there's open meetings law. We can't have 3 of us or 4 of us or 5 of us. If we have an open meeting, we can have a quorum of the board meeting, but normally what we do is we work things out one-on-one because that complies with the open meetings law. So we could take the law as it stands right now with the ideas that are in there, and I can work with the different board members and get a consensus view, and then adjust the law based on what I'm hearing of a consensus view. So one option is we just say, hey, we as a ZRC are done because we've gone as far as we can go, and we're just going to pass it. I'm okay with a compromise solution, but I compromised a ton at the last meeting, and then the one time I said I can't go there, I got shot down. So that to me is not compromise between the 3 of us. So I know you've already apologized, but that being said, I don't know how working this out is going to look. Will it be a true compromise, or is it going to be always a majority rules, in which case 2 of you are restrictive, and that's always going to be the answer that goes?
Well, I'd like to say something and pose a question. This is for everyone. So, while I mean, again, it depends on what your definition of the center is, but again, I was the one who originally suggested making owner occupieds unlimited. I have gone out of my way to soften and be open to possibilities to expand this program. So I definitely, again, I would appreciate, not being pigeonholed as being restrictive. I'm trying to be very considerate of the opportunity cost versus, the fallout of, being too lenient, which is where we have been. We have not, there is not a provision of too restrictive. And I do feel that if you can, find the trust and faith in me personally, but also Jude, to be objective, because I don't just believe, I feel that we have been very receptive to other points of view. And I really want to put this last meeting to bed because I'm just going to try and say again that if you, on a personal level, if you ever feel like you want to talk something out with me on that level, please give me a call. I would do the same for you if I felt like it would improve things. And in some ways I have, not in terms of this board business, but in terms of, hey, I didn't like how that went down. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's figure out how to like do this better because this is important stuff. And it's certainly not. I'll tell you this. I felt strongly enough about that point that I wanted to say that, yeah, we should be documenting certain disagreements for revisiting, but I don't feel strongly enough about it to say that we should have two completely different tracks. Like if if even with an expanded perspective of that particular idea, which was if you reach this threshold that you sign up in like quadrants or whatever of the year, if I couldn't convince you of that, then I'm not gonna that's not the hill I'm gonna die on. I'm not gonna let that delay this. There are a million different ways to skin that cat. So that being said, I want to kick it back to you two by reiterating Jude's question, which is I am also confused as to where the differences really have become so much that we don't think we can produce a single document,
Well,
a
we can go back.
singular.
Okay, so we can go back and initiate and resume our review. I mean, I've already put like 2 columns in some places, so we can go back and resume our review and see where the differences are, and then see if we think we can do it. I mean, the alternative is we can. Well, I mean, see, here's the thing. What I would like this ZRC to work on after this is we have a housing oversight task force proposal that affected the chapter 202, which is subdivisions, which the recommendations were to help the environment, and chapter 260 that had a whole lot of changes that a lot of people don't like. And I would love to have, Jude and Connor, you both weigh in on chapter 202. I don't want to touch 260 yet because there's a lot, but 202 should be more straightforward to look at in terms of it's really meant to help the environment. And I think we can agree on that. So one option is to say, hey, let's move on to something where we agree. And like I said, I can take this STR work and talk to individual board members, and based on their feedback of what they might vote yes or no on, build a consensus and take the law from where it stands to completion. But that would take it out of the STR's hands. But I don't want to, I don't want to waste your time. And if you feel like you're wasting
This
time,
is let me just clarify this then. And Jude, I would really love to hear your feelings on this as well. But I don't I this is I that's not to me an acceptable way to move forward. If we're going to have 2 bills and we're going to show columns, if they're going to see the columns, then we're going to be submitting 2 different bills, and we should just work on 2 separate bills. If you are unwilling to commit to this process in terms of course, documenting our differences and hashing them out as we have in the past. I am not looking, I will approach any idea with open mindedness. I promise you that, like, I am not just being, I'm looking at everything we've all seen. But if we can't agree on that, then what I don't want to do is sit here and review the document if we're going to be compromising, and then we're going to have something else that we really don't have,
well,
interest or input in presented alongside. I feel it's misleading, and I feel like it would damage our ability to work on in the future.
well, I think so. I love the idea of we have a consolidated answer from the ZRC. I love the idea. The reality was I was getting steamrolled at the last meeting, and that's not compromise between the 3 of us. Having one person always give up this, give up that, give up 5 different things, and then say, oh, I can't give up that, and then being steamrolled. So that, and I know you're saying, oh, I just had to make a note. But the thing is, I had given up a lot of what I really believed was things that I thought were right, and I was giving up things to make them more restrictive than I was really comfortable with. So it depends. If the 3 of us going to all compromise and true compromise, then it makes sense for us to try to have a consolidated document. If but each of us needs to be giving up things. That's what compromise is. You're each in a perfect world, you're finding solutions so nobody really has to give up anything because you've solved everybody's issue. But in the real world, I think we're seeing with this topic, there are going to be issues. And if I'm the only one compromising, and I kind of felt like that last time, if I'm the only one compromising, then then we're going to wind up with it with a law that I'm not even going to vote for when it gets to the town board. So that doesn't make any sense to me. So we can give it a go. And right now I've got 2 columns. Right now I've said, well, we could do it this way or that way. And we're not done yet. We may, by the time we're done, have the 3 of us say, okay, it could be this way, it could be that way, it could be somewhere in the middle. Let's find a middle ground, and let's, we may have a consolidated answer by the time we're done. We don't yet, but we might by the time we're done. I can't guarantee we won't have a consolidated answer. I love the idea. I love the idea.
I'd really like to hear from, I'd like to hear from Jude on this, because again, I can't, if we like the idea of having a commitment to a singular voice in this has been unspoken up until this point, I guess, but it just does not make sense to me. So Jude, I'd really love to hear where you're at on this.
I guess I knew this wasn't going to be easy. And I knew there was going to be a certain amount of pushback. I knew that's why I asked at the very beginning if there was a will to do this. But I guess, I'm still wondering if there was, given, again, we've had the benefit of all those presentations and talking to other towns and looking at other laws. You just want to turn that over without going through all of those things again, without the benefit of all of those things. I just am really confused about what the goal was from the beginning. And we had a list of things that we thought were important. I think I sent that email out before our last meeting, that we had all agreed that these were important things that we were trying to do. And I just am not sure where this is going. I'm a little confused by it, because I thought there was agreement, and I thought that's why the town board asked us to look at this, is that it had become out of control in Woodstock, and that there was a desire to try to bring it back in to a manageable place. Now, maybe what Laura, I don't know what you think a manageable place is, because I know you said you felt like you were steamrolled, but it wasn't until the very end that became apparent. So we were going through this and we were having conversations, and and I had even said at one point, let's skip over certain things and move on to the things that are simple, so that we can get to the harder things later and try to hash them out. But I'm just very confused about where this is going, why we're doing it, and who is making the decisions for our community, for our residents, for the people, like I keep saying, the 95% of people who are just living here in their homes. They're not running a commercial hotel in their home, and they're just minding their own business. So I just am not sure. I never expected to completely eliminate non-owner occupied STRs. It's the ideal. I've talked to several towns who are doing it. They don't care. They just said it's for our community.
Yeah, me neither, for the record.
And I've talked to lots of people who are saying, listen, and I actually wrote to somebody today and I said, can I share your email with Laura? I keep talking to people and they're like, if they're people who live here, they're full-time residents and they're here and they're on the premises, because being on the premises does control a lot of the behaviors we're trying to control for the neighbors, right? So they're like, I'm all for that. I want to support our residents, just like we did back when the accessory apartments were allowed. Woodstock was one of the first towns to do that. So I'm just confused about where you think this should go. It's so different than what we think. And, so maybe we just need to go through it. I'm almost more in favor of moving on to other things and coming back to this when, the temperature has cooled a little bit. And I know there are people at this meeting who have very strong feelings about it. I don't know what to say about that, except that you're, again, in a minority and we're trying to come up with some kind of compromise. I think Jeff was talking about a 3-year limit on them, and then you go back to, we talked about this, Laura, and you seem to be okay with that. that there would be a 3-year that you would have it, and then would give somebody else an opportunity. And I think I sent you an email where Bill had said to me some sort of lottery system seemed more fair to him because it gave other people an opportunity. I just am not sure where you want to go with this. It's so dramatically different than what we're all hoping to accomplish, which is to restore some, some um, residential priorities for our residents. Anyway.
Right. And again, where I'm looking, what my gut feel is, and again, I don't have numbers, but my gut feel is, in my view, the pendulum was swinging too far this way, and somewhere in the middle, because I think as we make changes, I don't like hurting people and hurting what, we don't want to hurt the residents. The reason I put the STR law in place to begin with is because at the town board meetings, we had resident after resident coming to talk at the town board meetings about how the whole neighborhoods had really been taken over by strangers. And that's where we started talking about community versus commodity. So we had, so we knew there was a problem because we had people coming to the town board meetings a lot. And that's why the STR law was put in place, and one of the first STR laws, I think, in the county. But so now we have an STR law, and we said, well, we ought to look at it every some number of years, make sure it's still serving us well. So we're looking at it, and we also know things like we have a long-term rental issue because we need more affordable housing. So we know we have different issues happening, and as people at this call have pointed out, well, that wasn't necessarily all because of the STRs. I mean, things like COVID and everybody from the city wants to move up, all of a sudden, there's a different supply and demand. And anyway, so there's a lot of stuff going on. So we are trying to make sure we have a good community. We are trying to still have a community, not all commodity. We are still trying to make sure neighborhoods are good, but we have some laws like the noise ordinance. There's different things going on that solve things, and making things a little stricter in terms of, the garbage would be left out. The bears would strew it all over the place because the owner wasn't making the right, putting the right things in place to make sure that things were taken care of. So there's different things that we are solving. But I would rather, I believe it's better to take, again, pendulum swinging from here over to here, I believe is going to hurt people. And I believe,
but I'd like to, I've heard you say that, but what about
Connor,
materially?
Connor, I did not interrupt you. Connor, I did not interrupt you.
Fair enough.
I'm still going. Okay. So my concern is if we swing the pendulum, in my opinion, from over here over to here, there's a set of people that we're going to hurt. If we swing the pendulum part way, then we can say, hey, we can shore up some of these problems we want to shore up. And we can take a look again. If we swing the pendulum part way, then we can see, where are we now? What problems do we have to fix now? So I do believe if we swing the pendulum too far, we are hurting people who are not causing Woodstock a problem. So I'd like to see us shore up some things, and perhaps we get to new numbers by attrition rather than killing people that are already, doing things a certain way. So I'd like to find a smooth way to do things to get us where we want to be without, again, hurting people. And by making too drastic of a change, I think if we go part way, we can stop, live with it for a few years, see how we're doing. Whereas if we go too far, then I believe we are hurting people that we don't need to be hurting. And I'm not sure we're fixing, we may be fixing problems that we didn't really have. We're improving some things, but we're causing some problems. So that's my concern, is the end result might be problems. So go ahead, Connor. I know you want to jump in.
So I'm sorry, but how? I appreciate what you're saying. I understand the strokes of your perspective. And please don't take this the wrong way, but you're not saying anything material. You're saying things that are analogous to how you feel about it. And we're asking very plainly, where is the line cross? Because again, I am operating under the assumption that all three of us and any future additional member who we might or might not see on this board would be operating always from a place of what is right versus wrong, via not just feelings and strongly held personal beliefs, but based on facts, on numbers, and on the various testimony that we've had. Like for me, I compromised by opening my heart and mind to an unlimited process for owner occupied. We came up with two other qualifications to expand that, including snowbirding and all of that stuff, which were new ways to open the door for this. And again, if you're not sort of holding your ground as you feel you have to, then it's not going to seem like you're compromising. It's going to seem like you're okay, that we're all on the same page about this stuff. And I agree with Jude, like up until that point where, again, just the note, because it's not something I expected us to put in stone. Up until that point, it seemed like we were on a nice downhill sled in terms of our efficacy. And again, just to say, I was surprised when you suggested to get rid of them. It seemed like you had arrived there organically and accepted something that maybe you had. And so it's okay to go back there and revisit it. But, and Jude, I would like to directly ask you, because my question at the end of the day is, can we really continue to attend these meetings and operate in the way that we have if we're going to put all this work into a compromise bill that's just going to habit something else to the side of it? I mean, if how does that work?
Well, I'm looking at the time, and this is what I think. I think, Laura, it would be really, really helpful if you would send us whatever your differences are, so we can see it, and then we
Okay.
can talk about it a little bit and
I think that's a good idea.
really give it some thought. Because as I said, when this original draft was written, it did not eliminate all non-owner occupied short-term rentals.
Right.
So that was just something that came about and surprised me, honestly. I do think, you know, I'm sure I'm going to get shut down for this, but I'm talking to other communities. That's what they're doing. They're just saying, for our residents, you live here, we want to support you. We don't want hotels in our neighborhoods. We don't want supervised guests. All those things. It's happening all around us. So it's not that I object to it, but it certainly was not in the original draft because I personally didn't think it was going to fly. I do think that there's a more fair way to do that. I do think it should be more controlled. And, you know, but I don't know that we're going to go anywhere today. I think it would be really helpful if we could see what it is that your concerns are, and maybe we're not as far apart as you think.
Well, and that may be, and I agree with you that by me saying what I have, and then we try to work on where we're different and see how we proceed. But if everything is a vote and 2-1 wins, and I lose every time, then that's a steamroller. So we'll see how we do. But I agree with you. The right next step is I will send the updated document with what my alternative would be. And it may be we may have very few areas of disagreement, and it may be we solve things again. If we reinstate the type 4, we may solve it by having a restrictive cap. I think having type 4, putting it back in, I think is a good idea, but we may have a restrictive cap, and we may reduce a number to that cap by attrition, which I sense that neither Jude nor Connor really likes that idea, but we may reach that cap by attrition, as opposed to, you know, the lottery is a different idea. Not the lottery, but I like the 3-year idea better. You have it for 3 years, then you have to go to the bottom of the list. That's better than a lottery, because then people can plan ahead. So, and I'm actually still okay with the, hey, yeah, you have to own your property for 3 years before you can do an STR to begin with. If you're just buying a property, because I'm less concerned about putting in a law that somebody's got to adhere to when they start. If they know the law when they start and they have to adhere to it, that's one thing. But to have people who have been living a certain way and then yanking something away, I'd like to be smooth about that. I like to, you know, just yanking it. Let's find a smooth way, and attrition is a smoother way. So some of what we can do, we may agree to certain things, but then, yeah, there's a lot to work out still. But I totally agree with you. I should send Jude, I should send you and Connor a document of what my differences are, and then we talk about whether we can reach that. because you know, there are things, and I don't really want to stop the discussion. That, to me, that's not the best idea, because you each have been fabulous in giving not only your ideas but your reasons for those ideas, and it's going to be a better document because of that. So I always want to have, you know, both of your inputs as we proceed, because your input has been extremely valuable and has legitimately changed my view on some things, but not everything. So in any event, it's kind of a journey, and I think me sending you, finishing up doing my updates of what the differences are, and then we go back and see what do we do about it. I do think that's the really right next step. And then I would love it if we do come out with a ZRC endorsed solution. But again, if everything is let's have a vote and I get outvoted and everything, I'll be steamrolled, and that is not compromise. So we need to figure out
yeah.
how we're going to get to a solution.
Well, I can't just, create a map for that. But that being said, is that, like, you have said you compromised in ways that were not apparent to us as part of what this discussion was. And so I think the first step is, because again, I'm just going to say, like, no matter where we end up, if we are not, so I don't want to participate in a process where maybe we'll have an undermining document. I will say, like, yeah, throw owner occupied back on there. Let's get back to the work of determining a number that makes sense to work down to, or whatever happens with that. But it's in the interest of saying that I'm willing to do that. I didn't fight tooth and nail to have that removed. It seemed like you got there organically. So if you are willing to commit to a singular document, and you tell me, that honest to God, you're gonna, stand up for what you believe in, I'm gonna stand up for what I believe in, she'll do the same. And I think we'll find that we will end up in similar places if we are trusting of each other and arguing in good faith and sharing. And again, because I appreciate you saying, because I do try to not just say this is how I feel, this is why I feel.
Right. Well, I think
Or
I've
not
said why I feel.
that.
Yeah, I think I've said a little bit about why I feel, because again, I don't want to be hurting people. I want to find a way that's smooth. I think two things here. One is figure out where we want to get, and the second is figure out how to get there smoothly so we're not hurting people in the process. So it's a kind of a two-parter. But
And just to put that on there, because if we are talking again about, and I'm not saying there's no place for anyone. We have been very, I think, generous and expansive of reimagining what this could look like and giving more people opportunity. It's always a good time to remember that people have been hurt by the fallout of the existing. Like,
well, that's a
there
good
is,
point.
it's not just about, who gets hurt, six in one, half a dozen in the other. It's kind of like, this is a step towards remedying damage already done. And that's not the whole picture. I don't think we have for an instant treated it like this is the whole picture or a silver bullet. But again, there's another side to not undoing certain damages. And those people, while they are not present in trolling us in comment sections and in email threads, they are hurting. They have
Yes.
been hurt by the decisions of this town. And
Yes.
so they count too.
I agree 100%. And that's very, very well said. Very well said and very true.
Okay. I think
Okay.
till next time then, huh?
Well, I did promise people they could do public be heard. Jude and Connie, you're welcome to stay or go. Anybody that wants to speak, limit yourself please to 3 minutes, and we'll see how we do.
Can I just say one more thing before we go? I'm gonna make it two things. I'll try and make it quick. I very much value this board, and I very much value all of the perspectives that we've heard from it. I know that it can be hard sometimes when you have very interested and overwhelming sort of pressure on you to see things a certain way, and it's not like we're not all doing that to each other as well. This is a tough issue, but
Yes.
you know, for me, what I need out of this, what I actually need from this, is for us to remain unified, because there's just the work we're doing and the way we've done it has not failed us yet. And I think it's
Yes.
too soon to say, well, that we've reached some sort of impasse. I don't believe we have. And if I'm hoping that by the next meeting you'll be willing to commit with me to that, because I'll do it
We'll
for
give it a
I
go.
really I if you will do it, I will do it too. I know, I'm sure Jude feels the same. You know, I mean, I do also agree. Someone said in the comments too, we should probably think about getting another member. I know a couple of names have been floated in the interest of a more diverse consensus. However, you know, I want to, I know we want to keep, you know, them professional, objective, and
Mhm.
as dispassionate as one can be. And I hope that you trust that throughout this, I am nothing if not dispassionate. I try to do it by the numbers and not just by who is the loudest.
Yeah. Well, you've been a fabulous member, as has Jude. Both been fabulous members of the ZRC. So we'll give it a go. We'll give it a go next meeting. I'll send the document as Jude recommended. I'll send the document of the differences that I see right now, and we can work our way through them. So
So since this is going to be a draft, can we just keep this between us for now?
well, the draft, I just sent it to you and Connor. Yes, I'm not sending it all over the place.
I just want to make one comment here, just for those of you who feel like you should be represented on this committee. It's an ethics violation for you to be writing a law where you have a financial interest. So, and not only that, this is, although right now we're tackling this really, really difficult topic, it's not the only thing we do or will do. So it's more appropriate for people who have been on the planning board, for example, or the ZBA. And I believe when this was formed, it was comprised mostly of those people.
Yes.
So anyways, that's my 2 cents there.
Yep.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Will. You know, I think we can move on and take a breather here.
Yeah, I agree. I'll send the document and we'll work. So I'll let, does any, after all of that, and as some say, you're watching the sausage be made, and boy, you're really getting to see it. So anyway, does anybody have anything that they feel is important to add at this moment in time?
I'm just gonna say before I head out, Laura, just really don't forget, you have my number. You call me about the other stuff.
And I did. I know it was kind of late for me to call you because it was the middle of your workday, but we can talk offline.
Well, I feel I'm not trying to make a big thing. It's just like, you know, if it was bothering you, I'm sure longer than 2 p.m. today or whatever it was, and you don't, and I'm just, it's not good to, not for, I'm not saying that as a critique. It's just, you know, like I've done it for people who, you know, things happen, and then, you know, I'm here to talk it out. So don't hesitate.
Yeah. I appreciate that. We have had great conversations, and we're going to have more. So sounds good.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Connor, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank
Extra
you.
tonight, Connor, like really, maybe I'll message you privately afterwards, but I don't think I've heard so much heart put into it. So I don't want to take up public be heard time right now. So
that does mean a lot to me. Thank you very much.
I wish you would stick around for public be heard, because it's part of what I wanted to say. Can I take up public be heard now? You're leaving.
Sorry,
you're out.
I am gonna have
you
to
had a
go,
long
but
day,
I
Connor.
promise I will review this later. It all ends up on YouTube.
Thank you.
And it's another thing I love about this board is that we do everything in the daylight, as much as it sometimes makes
When
our
there's a
life
quorum,
harder.
yes. When there's a
Yes,
quorum, yes, I do understand the open meetings law. Yes.
Yeah, we have a
Right.
quorum, and we have a quorum today.
Yeah.
So
Tonight we
So
do. We
I'll-
didn't a couple meetings ago. I understand. Yes, thank you.
I'll see you next time. Okay.
Thank you, Connor.
okay. Anybody else have anything they want to share at this moment in time?
All right. Not worth it if Connor took off. So maybe we'll catch
Could
him.
Could I now then? Because I'll just start then, since I had already spoken, and I'll definitely keep it under 3 minutes. So I just wanted to say first that yeah, that's the first time I've really connected on that deeper level, hearing first, because I missed our last meeting, I didn't understand that Ed had left. So now we're down to 3 members from 4. And on our website, it's listed as 2 open positions. So now I guess it's 3 for
Well, it depends on,
what was-
depends on how you count.
well, wait a second. I only have 3 minutes, so
Yes,
reclaim
go
me.
ahead.
And so it's listed as 6 members total. But then we had 4 members, so we didn't have a quorum. And now we have 3 members, and we're talking about a majority being offensive or steamrolling. But that's sort of what happens when we have a 5-member town board, and it's constantly looked at as a steamroll when you are the chair. Laura, I'm sorry to address you personally, we're feeling steamrolled in this meeting, but I must, because we're majority rules. So you might be the chair, but if we're looking at a majority of opinion, then 3-2 is 3 to, or a 3 to, or 2 to 1 is 2 to 1 in a 3-person committee, isn't it? And it's not a board, it's a committee. But you cannot put toothpaste back in the tube. So when we're trying experiments with people who are looking to pay their Central Hudson bills just to live in this town, that's what it is. And they should have priority. So, we're looking for a unified voice, not a 2-track. We're not looking to win more work. And if you look back at our December town board meeting, you were there, we're supposed to make this decision by April, right? You're talking, the next meeting is 2 weeks from now. That's not April anymore. So if you review those minutes, everyone, please. So I really appreciate everyone's work here. I do. But everyone, if we do not have any more liaisons to from the board to each committee, and we only have people working on projects, everyone has their hands in something. And I feel that, Laura, you should abstain from voting on zoning or housing if you are the chair of this committee and butting heads with your others. And it's a little sticky who should be making decisions in the board generally for environmental issues. Let's face it, at this time, we have to take a look and maybe slow down. And thank you. That's all I have to say for now. Tomorrow's a
Okay.
big meeting. It
Okay.
unites us, at
Thanks.
least one thing.
Okay, I have Michael Henry, your hand was up first.
Thanks. I don't have anything substantive to say. Just want to say thank you to Connor and Jude, who aren't here, and to you, Laura. I know this is a lot of work. It's hard. One of my professions is as a divorce mediator, so I am used to sitting with groups who are not in agreement, and I know there is usually a way through if people are committed to doing that. I think that you've laid it out very well, Laura, that there is a wide spectrum of views about STRs. On one side being they should be completely unregulated and, it's a free market capitalism and, go have fun. And then the other side being there are towns that ban them outright, right? And I think it makes sense to find something that is somewhere in the middle. I do find that some of the concerns, it's frustrating that when concerns come up and we're trying to figure out what exactly is this law trying to cure, and then when specific responses come up about, if it's affordable housing, well, don't let, Connor has friends who have been forced out of their rental homes because the owners decided to convert them to STRs. So we've proposed things like not letting anyone get an STR permit if it's been a long-term rental within the past 3 years or 5 years. And those suggestions just sort of blow by because it doesn't seem that sometimes there's the community, not commodity. I get that. There's the concern that Woodstock is not the town that it was 20 years ago and 25 years ago, and the restaurants are more expensive and the traffic is heavier and there's more rich people here. And that, we all feel weird about that, right? I feel weird about that in my home downstate, right? But it's what the actual regulations, the connection between what the regulations say and what the perceived problem is often seems to me to get lost in the sauce with a reflexive, ew, something your gross has happened to Woodstock. I don't like it. Must be the short-term rentals. Instead of really trying to have a through line, it's this issue, let's tweak the law here. And I think there's some of us who have been frustrated that on this committee, there's loud voices that just seem to be very deeply reflexively anti-short-term rentals as the cause of Woodstock's problem. And I think it's a much more nuanced and sophisticated discussion than that. But I do seriously appreciate the amount of time and effort and knowledge that the people on this committee have been giving, and I want to thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Patrick Dennis, you're next.
Thank you very much. Second Michael's comment. This is a tough thing for the board to deal with, and the fact that there are only 3 of you, especially difficult. And my request was obviously you guys are going to share your list of important items that Jude mentioned earlier. And once you guys have had the chance to review that, can we see that? Perhaps you could send that to Michael or Lisa, so that we can better communicate with you too, because part of this, Michael's correct, that part of our frustration and part of one of my frustrations is my wife and I have attended numerous meetings through Zoom, is that feeling like we're not getting our point across. As Michael pointed out, there are certain situations where people have gone to great lengths to try to propose different ways to handle concerns we all have about the community. And you sharing that list of important items that you have would help us perhaps communicate with you better.
Okay.
And the fact of electrical bills, the fact of property prices, the fact of affordable housing, it's a countrywide problem. I grew up in a beach town in Southern California, and we left and came here because it had become so untenable being able to live there. It's a problem everywhere, and it's a problem that we as community members we're all concerned with. So us with the WSTRA, we are trying to really be accommodating, understanding, and good, responsible members of the community. And we've been here for 8 years, and trying to do what's right by our neighbors and by the community at large. So anything you can share with us once you guys have had a chance to review that would really be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen, you're next.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I also want to thank everyone for all the hard work that's gone into this. It is a really hard, difficult, and contentious issue. I guess my thought was that I just wonder why only 3 people ended up on the committee, and I do think that creates a very difficult situation because it's a small number of opinions and it's an odd number, but an odd number of 3, which is kind of different than an odd number of 5 or an odd number of 7. You don't get the, you don't get the kind of diversity of opinions. So I just wanted to add that in. Yeah, I am an STR owner, but I'm very much in favor of regulating it. I completely understand that. Want what's best for Woodstock, but I do think that there's a lot of complexity, and so I would just suggest maybe it be considered that the committee be expanded. Whoever it is ends up being on it.
Yeah. So and that's the hope. And what happened? We actually were up to 7. Honestly, we were up to 7, but 2 members had health issues, critical, serious health issues, and just hadn't been able to attend for 1 year and 2 years, and it just made sense to say, hey, they really can't attend, so they came off the committee. And then Jeff Collins, we've had wonderful committee members. Jeff Collins was a wonderful committee member. When he got his county legislator job, he just said, I just can't do both things. And Ed Sanders, Ed Sanders wrote, he was one of the small team that wrote the zoning law we have today that came out, I think it was in the 80s. So Ed certainly was a fabulous member of this team, and he's taken a break. So I have to respect that. He's totally fabulous. So we have a lot. So that's how we got down to 3. is we had 5, but then Jeff, and the number can be, I mean, the town website, as Sarah said, the town website said, well, it's a 6-member team. It's whatever number of people who are the right people who can be added into the mix and help us get, make good decision on zoning. So, we started out with 6, then we had 7, then we had 5, and now we got 3. So 3 is a little slim, as you're pointing out, I agree. But as opposed to throwing warm bodies on, it makes sense, as I think Connor said it before, and I think it was Connor that said it, is if we have people who have planning board experience or zoning board of appeals experience, or people who have governmental experience, it makes sense to have people, because we're dealing with Woodstock zoning law, and to add people, it makes sense to add people that that start out with a base understanding of what Woodstock zoning law really is. And then, so I'd rather work with a team of 3 who are wonderful people. Both Jude and Connor are wonderful people. I'd rather have a team of 3 that does have the right background and the right objectives and really working for Woodstock. To me, having the right people is more important than what's the exact number. In a perfect world, we'd have more than 3. But in any event, we want to add people who really have the right, the right experiences about Woodstock zoning to really bring some depth to the conversation. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we have Martin. I have Martin's iPhone. Looks like Martin's next. But thank you, Eileen.
Hi, I came in late, but I got to the point where the issue of whether or not this is a balanced committee, and to me it seems like it's very much not. If you were looking for, I'd like to just say that I would be happy to join this committee. I have both experience on the zoning board of appeals, and I was part of the group that helped the board write the original STR law, whatever, so a couple of years ago. So I'd be happy to join. I think that this committee needs to represent the town and not just a small part of the town. And I think this is very unbalanced at the moment. So I'll follow up with email, but I just want to make it public that I would like to join. I am an STR owner. I do not feel like that would be an ethics violation. You can certainly check with your counsel to confirm that, but I certainly have the experience you have stated you're looking for to join this committee.
Okay. And Martin, what was your last name?
Mills, M-I-L-L-S.
I-L-L-S. Okay, cool. And we have a lead on another name of somebody who was a planning board member who I think would be an excellent person as well. So
I think to not have someone who is involved with the STR is travesty.
Well, because it would bring balance to this conversation. But do understand that when we finish with STRs, we'll be moving on to other things. So I don't know whether your interest is just being on as far as we do STRs, or whether your interest is being part
My
of
interest is in general. I mean, look, I used to be in government. I used to be in urban planning, development. I'm interested in all zoning laws.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. That you may be able to be part of our solution. So sounds
You'll get an email this week.
Okay, and make sure you include the supervisor at woodstockny.org.
Of course, I got it.
Perfect, Martin. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
And Rick, you're next up.
Thank you. Appreciate all the work that everyone's doing here. I just wanted to echo one of the other gentlemen's request here as well. Is it possible for us to, where can we see all of this data that Jude and Connor are claiming that all of their recommendations have been made based off of? Because there's a couple of things that have been recommended that, in my experience, are kind of going against the grain as it relates to STRs. So for example, this idea of banning non-resident occupied, the entire housing, kind of vacationing community is moving away from, I mean, Verbo's entire marketing message is you get the whole home to yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there are some elements that maybe Granicus's data has put in front that have been massaged a certain way, but I just don't understand who's supposed to buy all of these houses if all of the non-owner occupied groups are supposed to be pushed out, and how that actually plays out in affordable housing. You know, Patrick had mentioned this is something that's playing out across the country, and
Yep.
STRs is not the only issue. And I fear that maybe a plain view of the data would result in hedge funds buying up all of these properties and putting them at prices that no one can afford anyway. And so I just think that giving the group here who's participating access to that data as well, I personally feel very strongly that we will be able to use that data to present counter positions that could be used for negotiation. So
Yeah.
that's really my request. Is I'm hearing a lot of Jude and Connor taking the position that they are acting based on data only, and I personally don't believe that is being that's not on display here. This seems like Jude and Connor have a specific agenda that they're looking to push through, and I'd like an opportunity to help the community here to try and use data to get to a potential compromise, because I think that some of these overly restrictive things will actually backfire much worse than the current situation.
Yeah. So a couple of things is that the town is trying to put together a Facebook page. And I know Connor is not on the call anymore, but Connor and I had been working with Supervisor McKenna and Melanie, his assistant. We were trying to work, so it's not together yet, but to say, hey, can we have a Facebook page? What a lot of committees in town do is they just open their own Facebook page, and then it's opened with a member. The Facebook page is owned by a member of the committee. And what Connor and I had said to Bill and Melanie is we'd really like to have a zoning revision committee Facebook page that is tied to the town's Facebook page, not that just a member whips it up. Because if we have it tied to, because then when we have a Facebook page, we can have a spot for comments, which I know Linda Lover's on the call, and she's asked, where's the spot for comments? She's been asking for a while now. Well, it's not there yet. I mean, it's not there yet. It would be nice if it were, but it's not. But if we had a Facebook page, we would have a place for people to weigh in with their comments, as well as a place to hopefully post documents. So I'll look into whether we can post documents in the current website in terms of things that have been presented to us. The STR presented to us, the Housing Committee presented to us. We started out with a document from the STR task force, which gave us a document, I forget how many months ago, was it 4 months ago, 5 months ago? But there's a document that we got from the STR task force that then Kai from the county joined a call to help talk through it, to help us understand what was behind what was written there. So we do have some documents that I know we received, and maybe putting them on the town website is a place to put them for now, so that the documents are there. So I think you've raised a good point, and we're hoping for a Facebook page that's tied to the town Facebook page. In the absence of that, putting some of these input documents on the town website, I can look into that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just, like being data backed and then using the silent majority as one of your data points doesn't really check out. So want to be able to take a look at this data from a perspective of ones and zeros, and see if there's some conclusions to be made.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
thank you.
Cool. Okay. So Martin, your hand is up, but you might have still been up from before. Oh, I see Ralph has his real hand up, not a Zoom hand. Go ahead, Ralph.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you to everybody else. So, I heard Jude say before, that you basically have like experts brought in and experts that basically write all these documents and give their opinion on how to fix it and so on. And what I would like to add to this is always like, if you have an issue at hand and you basically explain the issue to experts, then they will come up with solutions to potentially fix that issue. What they not necessarily come up with is the damage they cause on the other side with the solutions they make.
Right.
And my issue with that is a little bit, like we live here for over 10 years now. We also have a similar issue that many others have, in regards to pay our bills. And it's not necessarily fun what we do. I would much rather, not have a rental, but I can't afford it. So the issue is that there is some good solutions, but I don't think they're all the way thought through on what damage they cause on the other side.
Right.
And I do not necessarily think that whatever is proposed right now will make a dramatic difference. I just don't think so. And it's also if you look at the economy right now, if you look at the greater picture, I have great doubts right now with all the costs that accumulate for people. If it's insurance, if it's food price, if it's gas price, if it's oil price, if it's whatever it is, that if there is a house in the market for $400,000 or $500,000, we are literally at the point where barely anybody can afford it at this point, because there is no extra $3,000 or $4,000 for the local community to make enough money here, basically to pay these, And I always understand or hear like partially you do this to bring property values down, but I think what it also is, what everybody forgets, is that we as homeowners spend a lot of money in the community to fix up our properties. And
Right.
what the federal government usually does is with bridge building and street building to basically so people can make a lot of money if they're in unions and so on. We do this in a smaller level. We pay contractors and other people a lot of money. They all make like $50, $60, $70 an hour. Electrician's $90, $120, whatever it is. For them to actually, it's sort of like a hand it down, we understand that. But you've literally like, you give us this opportunity a couple of years ago, we are heavily invested. All of us, or many of us, have really high mortgages. That if you do that, we are forced to sell. And what you do then is sort of like, you're not going to scrape off from the top because you don't need to do that. You like literally are going out there again and hurt the middle class and pull us to a point again where we are forced to sell. And what I think was said before as well, it's not the people who live here right now, unfortunately, who can buy these houses. It's just not the case. It's going to be the people from the city again that make enough money to be weekenders and don't have to do SDRs because of the fact they don't need to.
Right.
So it's really difficult for me to sort of like, and also like what I would like to say as well, like when Connor brought up before, like he's getting trolled by all these comments, I don't see it like this. These are desperate people on our side as well that reach out to you guys to understand that you're playing with our lives here as well. After you're giving us a certain right. So I think at least the people, that have been so heavily involved in this community for many, many years and do everything according to the local and current law and invested heavily and helped the community, support the community economically, you got to grandfather us and let us continue to do what we do because we have large obligations every month. It's not helping the inflation. We all of a sudden pay 7.5% on interest instead of like 4%. It's not helping the insurance costs go up like crazy every year, for corporate America to make a good buck, It's so we are in a desperate situation as well. So I think the housing crisis, if you give me a law and I can then basically read this law when I come into this community and say, hold on a minute, this law exists. I cannot afford to buy this house. I can make an educated decision. And I say, can't go forward because I can't do this. It would be illegal. If you give me this right and make me invest in the community heavily, and then you take it away. I mean, seriously, this is like, I mean, it's bad, I'm sorry, and it's like not what, and I hate myself for saying this, but this is like sort of like America doesn't stand for that. I'm European, but these regulations are sort of like, it's great. And I get it, I get the problem at hand. I understand that. But if you write these laws, then you're gonna like apply them to people that can make a decision that's really educated according to what is in place right now. And I heard somebody say before as well, like laws are going to be changed all the time. You're right. It's not going to help the problem. You're just going to push more people that are on this call as well right now into a situation we have to sell, we have to get out of here. And I guarantee you that many of these properties are not bought by people that say, you know what, I'm going to give some stuff back. It's a compound, no matter how much I have to drop my price for my property, that will not go on the market again. And I just wanted to say that. I also wanted to say thank you, Martin. Martin's a very good guy. He knows what he's talking about. I think that the ethics stuff that was brought up before, I do not know what a council would say to this regard, but I really think that a balance can only be achieved if you're going to bring somebody on that really like is balanced as well and sort of gives some weight, you know, that has a more open ear to the other side too, because we really feel heavily misrepresented here or not represented at all. And that's just like my honest opinion, because this gives us literally like sleepless nights partially, you know, because it's sort of like, where does this lead to?
Right.
Anyway, thank you very much again for everyone, for all the work you do. I just like, you know, I feel like a broken record at this point that we always have to speak up, you know, but it's almost like every single meeting sort of like forgets our points, I think. And I really appreciate still that you give us the opportunity to have everybody talk after the meeting. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. And I think you did hear me say, whatever we do, I want to make sure we do it smoothly so we don't hurt anybody. I mean, that's my
Yeah,
personal goal.
yeah, yeah.
Is like
Yeah.
if somebody buys a property and they know the rules, then they can, as you
Different
just said,
story. And
they
I
can
get
make a
it, you know?
decision when they
Yeah.
buy it. But when somebody's
Right.
already in a situation, I'm hoping we, you know, that I certainly want us to find a solution that doesn't hurt anybody. And even if we say, well, here's where we want to be, but then how do we get there's a second question? Can we get, yeah, let's find a way to get there that doesn't hurt existing people.
Right.
But from, you know, from here on forward,
From
here's
here
where we
on,
go.
exactly. And I totally understand that, you know, but there's a lot of people again that I know of invested because of the fact that they could do what they did, you know. And it's also
Well,
because there was the environmental question before. I had to put in a septic on my land where there was no septic, but 15 years ago there were people living and it went right to the mill stream. And it cost me
dear.
almost it cost me almost $50,000 to
Wow.
mediate the issue that
Right.
was at hand. So there's a lot of stuff that is sort of like on a positive side, you know, that is
Sure.
always forgotten, you know. So, but thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we've been over our hour and a half at this point. Is anybody else that has something that they need to say at the moment?
You do all?
Huh? Yeah.
What?
So I hear somebody, but I don't think they're, oh, Robin, I see you raising your hand.
I have a question and
Yeah, and I have to step away long enough to turn my light on. As you can see, it's very
Sure.
dark in my room here all of a
Yeah.
sudden. Let me just, right here. Okay, now I can see my notebook.
I have a
Yay. And you can see
question.
me, I'm no longer hidden.
My question is, and this is the first of these meetings I've attended, so I don't mean to waste anybody's time if I ask a dumb question. For these owner occupied STRs, are you requiring that the owners be on the site for the entire time with the renters?
Well, the way we have the wording worded in the current law that we didn't really go through today, I think it says something about they're either on site or they're easily accessible. Because I have heard some people say they're considered owner occupied, but when somebody's there, they actually stay with a friend and then they come back when the people leave. So I think our wording states that they're easily accessible, because the other person, somebody said as well, if you say owner occupied, you have to be in the building. You mean you can't go to the grocery store? So we kind of had the words be, but it needs to be owner occupied. It's not like you've gone to Florida, you know, and there are people that we call, you know, we use the term snowbirds. I don't know if that's a good term or not, but, you know, people that actually have their house where they're going to be gone for 2 months out of the year, or maybe even 3, and they might want to STR their house while they're gone. Well, that's considered non-owner occupied because the owner is physically nowhere in town.
Well,
So
what if the owner has somebody who does it for them, who's easily accessible?
well, see, here's what we discussed this at the last meeting. We had at one point, and somebody should mute. Ralph, is that you? You might need to mute, Ralph. Anyway, so we had changed the wording because at one point we had it, well, before the last meeting, we had it worded instead of owner occupied, we had it resident occupied, meaning there had to be somebody there who was not the owner. But we changed the terminology back to owner occupied. The theory behind that being that really we're trying to help the owner who is living there, who needs a few extra bucks. If the owner's really not there and there's some other person living there who is running the show for them, then it's really non-owner occupied. It's really kind of like a hotel. So we did change the terminology at the last meeting, and that was an agreement that I'm glad that was brought up, and I agree with that. So so we did change the terminology. So owner occupied means the owner, not just some other resident, but we did put the terminology back to owner occupied. It has to be the owner who is there, or they have to be like right near there.
Well, okay, so that does raise this question for me, because there we have you don't call them full-time residents, they have this as their primary residence, and maybe they have to work here or there or whatever. You're creating, they pay the same taxes that I pay as a full-time resident. They can even vote here, but they don't have the same rights and privileges that I do. Because I live here all the time and I've got a garage I could convert to a space, okay? But you're literally making them second-class citizens because they can't always be here. Second, even people who are here all the time and have a garage or a second building, I mean, not everybody does. They can't afford to build such a thing or to pay to convert it into a living space. That's thousands and thousands of dollars. And okay, maybe they don't have anybody here they can go stay with. You're depriving them of this opportunity because they don't have any money. And that does not seem fair or right to me.
Yeah, I'm missing what you're saying. Depriving who of what opportunity? If somebody buys a house and they're not,
let's pretend it's an owner occupied house where the owner lives here full time.
right,
But they can't afford to convert their garage to a living space, or maybe they don't even have a garage. Okay, so they've got nowhere to stay when they're renting their house out. Maybe they don't have anybody they can go stay with. A lot of people don't. So they're being denied this opportunity because they don't have the money to put a second structure on their property, or pay to convert their garage to a living space that they can stay in. And that just doesn't seem fair. It's based on the fact that they're poor.
but what you're saying is somebody wants to STR, but they don't have any space to STR somebody in. How am I depriving them? They bought a house they couldn't STR. And the type one, wait, hang on, Robin, hang on. Type one of the STR, as we've defined it, says there are some people that just open their front door and they let somebody use a bedroom, and they're STRing. They just let them use a bedroom out of their house. So that's a type one. A type one says somebody is sharing the same entrance, they're sharing the same kitchen facility, you're just giving them a room. That's type one, and that's going to be unlimited. You can STR if all you have is a room you're going to give to somebody. You can STR, that's type one.
Yeah, if you want to give a room to somebody, but these people still don't have the same rights as someone like me. I've got the garage. I could afford to convert it if I wanted to. I live here all the time. But let's say I didn't have a garage. I bought this house 10 years ago. I didn't have the foresight to buy a house with a garage. I can't afford to build one. And I don't have anybody I can stay with. So I can't have an STR because
how would you have an STR? How would you STR?
Work in Timbuktu for 3 months or whatever. And
yeah, you can STR, but it's non-owner occupied because you're the owner and you're physically someplace else. And that's what type 3 is all about. Type 3 means you reside in the house, but you've got small periods of time that you're away, and you can STR it. You would be type 3. So you would be type 3 because you're going to STR it, but you're physically not there while you're STR. You're in another country, another state, another wherever the heck you are. That's type 3. So owner occupied means, so yes, you are a different category, because what we really want to help mostly is the person who is living here, but they need a few extra bucks. But if you have a space and you're going to be gone because you go to Florida in the winter, or maybe you go to a beach resort in the summer, if you have a limited period of time that you want to STR, that's what type 3 is all about. If you want to have a house and you want to STR a whole bunch when you're not there, that's type 4. We've just reinstated that. So we got all 4 types back in that were in the discussion, but it's just, we're going to be more restrictive at the type 4, because if you're going to buy this house and not really be there very much, that's more commodity and less community, and that's not as good for Woodstock, in my opinion. So anyway, so 3 minutes public speaking for each person. I think we're beyond 3 minutes. I know I talk some and you talk some, but anyway, Robin, you're welcome. We can talk offline some more, but we do have the 4 types again that allows it. But the most desirable STR is somebody who does live here and they need a little extra income and they can be there when their STR guest is there. That's most desirable for Woodstock because that maintains the community, but it also helps them pay their bills and taxes, et cetera. So we're still allowing all 4 types. It sounds like we're putting type 4 back in again. I think I heard that from Jude and Connor. We can put type 4 back in again, but we're going to restrict it more because somebody who buys a house and they're renting it out more than 30 days in a year, then they're not really being part of the community. So we are going to be more restrictive because that's more of a commodity. And as Jude calls things a hotel, you get a hotel in a residential area. So we really don't want a hotel. It's not as attractive. It's not helping the community as much. Anyway, anybody else have anything that they feel like they need to say before we break?
I can't text in chat for some reason now. So I just wanted to point that out. Sometimes I have technical issues after I speak. So just letting that be known.
Okay. I don't know why that is. So in any event, okay. So I will capture all the comments because since I paid attention to the people, I wasn't paying attention to the comments. I will capture all the comments before I break, but I think we're breaking. So I'm going to capture the comments. Thank you all for coming and your input. I appreciate the back and forth, and I appreciate hearing the input because even though, as Ralph's still there, even though as Ralph says, yeah, it has to come to every meeting and say the same thing. Well, repetition actually does help a little bit. So yeah, I'm sorry it turns out you have to come to every meeting and say the same thing. However, I appreciate that you are at all the meetings, and I appreciate that you are keeping the focus on the points, because hearing everybody's points is how I believe we're going to get the best solution here. So I thank everybody who joined this call. Okay.
Thank you, neighbors.
I will capture comments and thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night. See you tomorrow. I hope 7 p.m.
Yep. Good night.
Good night.